Hello, friends, and welcome to Story Time. Today we're going to be reading the book, The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. This is the front cover, this is the back cover, and this is the spine. And the spine says, The Curious Garden. Okay, friends, let's get started. The Curious Garden. This is the title page. The Curious Garden. There was once a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. Should he go up to the top? Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last things he had expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. First he put too much water, then he cut too much, and then he started singing to the plants. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Look, it's getting bigger. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up further and further down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the curious garden explored every corner of the railway. Wow, look how much it's growing. It's really taking over the old railroad tracks. It started from very little at the beginning to slightly more to even more. Wow, this page has no words on it, just this beautiful picture of how much it's growing. Look how high it is. It's almost up to Liam's waist. Wow. Look at it's taking over the old railway track. There's even more flowers and shrubs blooming. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. Uh-oh, there's too much snow. He can't get to the garden. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken a toll on the garden. Oh no, it looks like the garden is just not what it used to be, was it? But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. And look, he's even singing to them to help them grow. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Like they're reaching down, they're reaching down. They're going to get to the house. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. Look, it started taking over this old car and the cracks in the sidewalk. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Uh-oh, the plants are covering the stop sign and the fire hydrant, and Liam had to remove them. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. Look, he's wearing a little detective outfit and he's putting some plants right down on the sidewalk and some plants in front of this guy's house. But the most surprising thing that popped up were the new gardeners. Wow, look at all these people taking care of the plants. Look at all these kids going to school with trying to learn how to plant. All these other people learning how to garden. Oh my goodness, look, there's plants on the water. There's plants here on the street, and now there's people having a picnic. There's plants on the steps. There's even some really cool animals here. There's all these plants taking over this tree near the building. The people are taking care of it. And there's plants over here on this building. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed. But of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. I think that means it's the top of the railroad. Look, there's people pruning, watering. Wow, the garden is everywhere. It looks so beautiful. There's gardens on every piece of ceiling and roof all over the city. I think Liam would be really happy about that. Do you want to live there? Would you want to live here? How did the book start? What did it start with? Oh, remember, this is what it looked like in the beginning. There were really very few plants anywhere. And now it's beautiful with lots of plants and lots of gardens. The end. This book was called The Curious Garden. Thanks for joining me for Storytime, friends, and I'll see you next time.